88.7 Adelaide's Coast FM.
And on the phone with me this morning, I've got Helen Graham, the CEO of Autism SA. Good morning, Helen. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good, thank you.
Helen, we're here to talk a little bit about autism, and I think many people probably have a preconceived idea of what they think autism is, but I guess it's not that black and white, is it?
No, it's not. And thank you for having me on this beautiful morning. There's a bit of sun shining through, so that's nice. There are lots of myths and preconceived ideas around autism, and so what we like to do is kind of describe it to people in a way that helps them understand it, take it out of that clinical context and talk about autism. We know it's a lifelong neurological developmental difference, and that really can change the way an individual relates to their environment and the people in it, and we find that really to be one of the best ways to describe it. So individuals, they sort of see and experience and understand the world perhaps differently to people that don't have autism.
I've heard that ASD and ADHD. How does one identify if someone in their family may be on the autism spectrum?
So the autism spectrum disorder term comes from the diagnostics manual, and they have a clear cut of criteria, and so that's where you see sort of the term disorder come up, whereas in the sort of the community of people on the spectrum, we see them refer to themselves as on the spectrum because that really reflects the way an individual experiences life differently, and there are lots of different ways people experience autism, and there's lots of different parts of their life where they have extreme strengths and skills, and then they find other aspects of their life quite challenging. So really we talk about the autism spectrum as a range of characteristics, and that helps the individual to receive that diagnosis that we see autism spectrum disorder termed. And then the other term you talked about is ADHD. So that's an attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And again, that comes from the diagnostics manual. And we see often in autism spectrum disorder terminology and also ADHD terminology that they're what's called co-occurring. So we often see that individuals with ADHD, who have a diagnosis of ADHD, also show some features of autism. But the issue is that idea of this diagnosis, this individual, that diagnosis. We like to look at a person as a person and see what their strengths are and what their skills are, and then what are the challenges that they may face from day to day, and try and get us some support in place for that person if it's something that's not working for them.
I'm finding that with my one of my granddaughters at their school, they've quite a few now that have been diagnosed with being on the autism spectrum, but some of them it's just like, as you said before, behavioural issues, etc. Or I find that when they're out and about, they can be reasonably normal, but when they get home in what they call their safe zone, they're completely a different person altogether.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So we see that approximately 1 in 70 people now are on the autism spectrum. Then that's sort of different to the 1 in 100 that we estimated. So I saw that data recently. So I guess what that means is we're starting to see, the better diagnostic tools that allows us to actually start identifying people within the community that are on the autism spectrum. And you're right, we know with little kids in particular, or young people in particular, they do a good job of masking things at school, and then they get home when they're in that safe space, and that's when they might find that some of their behaviours escalate, or tiredness, or generally just feeling overwhelmed and sensory overwhelmedness. All those things happen, and so parents are then finding themselves in this situation where you have bedtimes and dinners and all those things that we would try and get through. They're a little bit challenging because the little person spent all day holding it together at school and now perhaps can't necessarily manage that routine.
Well, I think for like grandparents and parents, and some of it seem to be like anxiety with the children, as I'm talking about children at the moment.
Yeah, so we do see lots of co-occurrences of anxiety with little people on the spectrum or young people on the spectrum, and it is difficult to manage that real feeling of overwhelmedness, particularly, like you say, at the end of the day where, where grandparents and parents are really involved in that end-of-day routine, or even in the morning routine where there's this time pressure where people have to get to work or people have to get to, whatever their activities are for that day. And now all of a sudden we're asking the children really to just jump on board that train. And that can be a little bit difficult for kids on the spectrum, particularly around the transitions piece and having to dedicate their time to something that perhaps isn't an interest of theirs or something they're not passionate about. So that then becomes a bit of a challenge for parents. But what we know with children who are diagnosed with autism sort of before the age of 7, they can get some benefit from what we call early intervention, and that's really that combination of practices between interventions and therapies, and that can help kids really develop the skills that can improve their quality of life. And it's really quite important because new skills are much easier to learn when you're young. So, perhaps you and I, old dog, new trick, but young people definitely can benefit from some of those skills and practice therapies, at a younger age.
Yeah, well, I've been talking about children at this point, but there are a lot of people who have being diagnosed in their late 30s, early 40s, and even later, and only just finding out they're on the spectrum.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a game changer, that diagnosis, in the sense that it helps people really understand why they see the world differently or why they experience their environment differently. And likewise, supports and interventions are available for all age groups. And for some people, it's just comforting to know what makes their world slightly different, or their perception of the world slightly different. For some people, there's no necessity for intervention. For other people, that's something they want support with. They might be finding a certain component of their diagnosis a bit distressing, and they want some support with that. And so that's certainly something that they can access to. And
I think at the end of the day, in most cases, it doesn't stop people from getting out there into the workforce and living normal lives.
I love that you say that. So I'm a huge believer in the importance of independence, choice and control, and absolutely people can benefit from employment, and that is no different for people on the autism spectrum. And so we absolutely encourage all of our clients to reach for the stars, and we absolutely encourage everybody to find what it is that they want to do, whether it be employment, whether it be study, and absolutely reach for that. And there are some components of the autism spectrum where it makes study or employment they're a really valuable person in that space because they've got skills and abilities that perhaps you and I don't have. So that's something that we try and support them to capitalise on, because we all have a value in the workplace, and that's no different for people on the spectrum.
What type of support and services does Autism SA provide?
Well, we provide all sorts of support, so we can do services completely across the lifespan, so that includes diagnosis. There's early intervention support, so we've got a foundation skills group program where we have little people supported through groups, and they're therapy-based groups. We offer speech pathology and occupational therapy. One of the ones that you touched on before was around behaviour, so we offer positive behavioural supports, and that's around supporting people with a plan to manage the environment around the young person and make changes around in the environment, and also for adults. We also have social work, and the NDIS can be a bit tricky to navigate sometimes, and so we also offer what's called support coordination to help people manage some of their plans. So we also do lots of training for families. We have workshops, they're online. We also do face-to-face now that we don't have as many COVID restrictions, so lots of different opportunities. We also have another part of our business that offers some respite and supported independent living. But typically for people wanting clinical services, we have lots of options, including some social skills development programs, so you can one-on-one or you can come in a group. Lots of different opportunities in our space.
That's excellent. And the big question is, where are you located, and how can our listeners get in contact with you if they have any questions?
Excellent. So we have an Autism SA website, so autismsa.org.au. There's an expression of interest form that you can fill out for groups or any services that you might be interested in. We have a newsletter that you can access on that same website. We are in both Elizabeth and in Tonsley, in the hub in Tonsley. So that's the old
Mitsubishi. Yes, I know that place very well.
yes, you would. Yes, so completely revamped. So our buildings in there, we've got some fantastic clinical spaces and some really cool things for the kids to do, and even our adults. So you can get hold of us through our phone line. Now we've got a Pathways team that'll take your call. So that's 1300 288 476. That's our info line, and then you can email our Pathways team. That's mypathways@autismsa.org.au, and you can email that at any time. And of course, we're on all of the standard socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of those ones.
That's excellent. Yes.
But yeah, as I said, we're at the Tonsley Innovation District and also Elizabeth, so not too far away, one end of Adelaide or the other.
Big thank you, Helen, and I feel we've only just scratched the surface on this subject and there's a lot more to discuss, so maybe we can get you back again another time.
Absolutely, would love to do that. That would be fantastic.
Big thank you to you, Helen, and just remember, if you have any questions, you can contact Autism SA. There is a free call phone line, 1300 288 476, or you can visit their website, autismsa.org.au. Thank you, Helen, and yes, well, hopefully we'll get you back another day.
Looking forward to it. See you later.
See ya, bye.
88.7 Adelaide's Coast FM.